There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your podcast host and life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code framework that will enable you to wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. When you're ready for more, head to marcybarker.com and we'll chat about your next goal. All right, let's dive in.
Good morning, my beautiful people. We are talking about the 6th step of the accountability code today, and that is feedback. Feedback is information used as a basis for improvement. And I'm really excited today to share with you a sneak peek of a story in my upcoming book called Becoming Bossminded. And what's so cool about this book is that I've been in business 10 years, guys. I'll hit 10 years this September. And I've learned a lot, I will tell you that. And feedback as information used as a basis for improvement, this is how you make changes in your life and your business based on what you want to repeat and what you don't. And in my book, I put in a story called The Art of Saying No, and I'm going to read it to you today. And you know, honestly, this is honestly going to be a practice of me recording my whole audiobook again, because not again, but for the next time. Because I'm going to do that. I'm totally going to have the audiobook available for you all. And there's going to be some special perks with the purchase on release date. So if you haven't yet, go to bossminded.com and click on books and it will have the wait list there. But I'm excited to record the audio. I'm excited to share the story, and I'm excited to tie it into feedback, because this was something that happened to me that was a very strong piece of feedback that now I operate completely differently because I absolutely need to now. And disclaimer, I have run this story past my mother-in-law because it has to do with a situation I was in with her. And she called me the other day and she's like, "How's your book coming?" And I said, "Good, I need to tell you about this story." And so I gave her the quick rundown version and we had a good conversation about it. So this is a story I want to share today because you absolutely have to make changes in your life based on what's happened to you. Because if you don't, you're going to run through the same cycles over and over and over again. All right, so here we go. The art of saying no. We have already talked about how to protect your energy in order to prevent burnout, but it is easier said than done. Let's go into depth about the art of saying no and how to develop confidence around your choice even when it is unpleasant for others. Step 3 of the Boss-Minded framework teaches how to find the edge. In order to grow, you have to challenge yourself, but there's a difference between healthy discomfort and self-inflicted exhaustion. You need to know your limits, and saying no is a critical skill that helps you stay just outside of your comfort zone without pushing yourself off the cliff or allowing others to. There was a time that I was burned out and I was exhausted from doing a lot in my life. My father-in-law had just passed away, and my mother-in-law came up with the idea to use rooms in her house for short-term rentals and asked me for my help. By this time, I had about a year's worth of experience with my own rental, so I told her I would come and take a look at what she wanted done. Each time she asked me for help with something, I also urged her to communicate her needs with her 2 sons. I told her that they'd be in a better position to make decisions because they were particular about certain choices, and I didn't want to have to deal with something they would likely want to change. But I was willing and capable, and that is why my mother-in-law continued to ask me, "You are the action taker, Marcy. You will get it done." Well, I couldn't agree with that truth. But just because I could do it didn't mean I should. I have crossed the line from growth into overload quite a few times in my life without even realizing it. I thought I was being helpful, but really I was pushing past my edge and heading straight into burnout, all for the sake of maintaining my helpful and capable identity. While discussing the preparation, we decided that the driveway of the house needed to be expanded to fit a couple more cars if she was going to make rooms available. This was critical for winter months since there was no street parking for half the year, including the winter months requiring the need to clear snow. As I told her my predictions on what the new driveway would cost, she insisted it could be cheaper and that I should ask the neighbor what they paid for their driveway. "You are the extrovert who loves talking to people, and people like you." I couldn't argue with that, so down the street I went. The neighbor wasn't helpful, so I told my mother-in-law it was time to contact some contractors. Who has the know-how and connections to ask for bids? I do. Who is great at asking the tough questions and making sure every answer is documented? That would be me. Taking on this job while running my business and other responsibilities was taking a toll on me. I complained to Aubrey that his mom wouldn't listen about what the real cost was going to be and that I had to drive over there once again to meet with yet another contractor. I was barely keeping my head above water, but I wanted to help my mother-in-law as she was a new widow. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the danger zone. It's when you've stretched too far trying to help everyone else, your edge becomes a blur. It's no longer about what's possible for you, it's about what others expect of you, and you fall for the trap once again. That's when resentment starts to build and your mental health takes a few hits. Her sister-in-law flew into town, and I was grateful that she'd have someone else to keep her company and maybe offer some suggestions on how the extra rooms could be comfortable for guests. As I sat in her living room to work on my business, the next contractor pulled up. He measured the area and said that they would need to rip out a bush that was in the way. This bush happened to be the last one my father-in-law planted before he passed away, and my mother-in-law suddenly changed her mind on making any big changes with the house. I was happy she made that decision because I urged her not to make any big changes for at least 6 months after his death. We stood in the driveway and I tried to explain to the contractor the situation. My mother-in-law's sister blurted out to me something to the effect of, "Why are you trying to make her cut the tree? And this is too much money. Why did you bring this man here for this job?" Just as this happened, Aubrey called me and asked if I could jump in his Zoom sales call, even though I had already told him I couldn't do sales calls for him anymore, and that I was already really overwhelmed by helping his mom. I had my own sales calls to attend to, and now here I am in this situation being blamed for trying to rip out my father-in-law's bush in order to make money on my mother-in-law's house. I had a breakdown. I tried to make myself clear. I tried to show that I cared. I tried to handle it all, and this was the edge of it. I opted out of it all at once. I had found my edge, and instead of slipping off it again, I decided to plant my feet. I realized that continuing to say yes when I was already overwhelmed wasn't brave or helpful. It was self-sabotage. A good therapy session helped me feel seen and heard, and now I had the courage to explain my new position, but something stuck out to me as Aubrey and I worked through this in order for it to not happen again. He told me, "My mom asks you to help because you've made a name for yourself. You've always been there to help, and you do get things done. You like that people know that about you and notice you for it." I was still mad, but he was right. I had allowed parts of the situation, although his aunt's comment was totally out of line and a separate issue to be dealt with. It still contributed to the boiling pot that exploded the second my phone rang. I was ready to make a new name for myself. I would become more boss-minded. I would not only be clear with my words, but I would back it up with my actions. I would not make myself available to help. I would express my need to focus on myself and my own children. Finding the edge is recognizing that the version of yourself others depend on isn't always suitable or even sustainable. I didn't need to be the fixer, the reliable one, the person who always swoops in. I needed to be the person who knew when enough was enough and had the strength to say no. The edge that others create for you based on their perception of you will never be your edge. If you believe someone else can define it for you, you have surrendered your boss-minded will.
Hey, my beautiful people. The message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's completely free. All you got to do is take this quick action. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code Wake Up and Show Up.
There came times where my new stance was inconvenient to others, but that was no longer mine to deal with. I was on a mission to develop the art of saying no. I am someone who doesn't like to live with regrets, and I knew that if I continued down a path of using my skills at the wrong time and for the wrong reason, I'd be approaching quite a few regrets and loads of resentment. Saying no is something that can be done in an instant, but following through will take some practice. It may require you to go deeper into the issue with those you can trust to support you. When I told my mother-in-law how I felt and the reason why I would no longer speak about implementing big changes with her, she was willing to listen, and our conversations gave her deeper insight as to why I tried so hard to direct her need for help to her sons. You may even find that in order to say no, you've got to have something already taking up your time and attention. This doesn't mean making up excuses or take on bigger projects just to justify your inability to help. This means that you are more clearly defining that your health, your goals, and your priorities take the front seat of your life. I want to give you the same step-by-step strategy to develop confidence while you master the art of saying no. These 6 P's are best done in order, and you'll find great value from working through each one little by little. Remember that you are the boss of your own time, energy, and resources. Proactive. Decide right now what's most important to you and what is not. Even though I was proactive with what I was working on, I was allowing other things to creep in beyond my radar. No one asked me how I was dealing with the death. No one cared what was on my plate or even how I was handling the death of my father-in-law. In order to master the art of saying no, you must determine right now what is most important to you. Be proactive for yourself because no one else will do this for you. What matters are you focused on right now that need your time and attention? Prayer. Actively include God in your decisions. This is not about being selfish or picky. It's about spending your time and attention where it is best. Being a doormat or the only person willing to do the hard things is not a reason to do it. Just because service is something we know we should be doing doesn't mean we always stop everything we're doing to run and help. We cannot pour from an empty cup. I think the entire situation would have gone better if I was more connected to God instead of making quick decisions to help because I was being asked over and over again. My ego fed off of being the most important person to make things happen. Priorities. Realign what you want and need to say yes to. After my father-in-law passed, I was preparing myself as best as possible to support my husband and children through the loss. In hindsight, I made this out to be a much bigger deal than needed. And looking back, giving my mother-in-law emotional support is what the priority needed to be. Instead, I added someone else's tasks to my plate, and I've learned my lesson. In order for you to master the art of saying no, pinpoint what you must decline so that you can say yes to the things that really matter. What do you need to say no to in order to say yes to your priorities? What things can you say yes to because they are aligned with your priorities? Prevention. Let others know what you will be available for or not. Prevent challenging situations by putting yourself on the do not disturb list. Aubrey was right. I had created a name for myself. Now it was time for me to give myself a promotion to a new name. I let him and his mom know that I was not available to talk about or help with setting up a short-term rental. I knew that in order to prevent another breakdown, I also had to decide what else I was no longer available for. What situations do you need to address now to make things clear so that you can prevent making a name for yourself that you don't want? Going forward, what are you not available for anymore? Prosper. Have confidence knowing that you are exactly where you need to be for your growth and those you impact. I knew that I could not serve my family, my husband, my mother-in-law, or my business when I was this stressed and overwhelmed. In a heart-to-heart with my mother-in-law, I expressed how difficult it was for me to carry out a lot of the things that I do and that I really needed to put myself first because I have 4 daughters depending on me. Now that I have mastered the art of saying no, I'm healthier, my girls are healthier, my relationship with Aubrey is better, and my mother-in-law has more peace because what really matters to her is being taken care of. What in your life do you want to prosper? What must you say no to in order to reap the benefits of your desired prosperity? What is getting in your way, and are you ready to say no to it? Practice. Continue this strategy until you've created a new name for yourself. You are not expected to be perfect by any means. However, your actions speak louder than words. Saying no is not rejecting those who are asking for your time and attention. It is simply a redirection to who you are aiming to become. Keep checking in with yourself and be very clear about what you are saying yes and no to. It shapes how you function and it affects how others treat you as well. The boss-minded individual not only masters the art of saying no, but knows exactly where their edge is and makes sure they don't cross it unless the environment is safe and supported. Boom! That is it, my people. Man, I really like recounting that story. I'm glad it's documented because, man, I did not enjoy feeling the way that I felt in that time. I remember being in that driveway when my phone rang and I was so pissed at Aubrey. I was so mad. I was so mad at his aunt for being so rude. And I also was bothered that my mother-in-law was making a lot of choices against what I was telling her what I thought would be best, out of love. And my mother-in-law, after we'd had this conversation, she actually called me back a few days later because she had been thinking about it. And she wanted to make sure that I knew that things were just miscommunicated and she was different after the death of her husband. And I think that when we go through those experiences, it's a really good opportunity to say, you know what, this was not great. Let's do something a little bit different next time. And so that's exactly what has happened. Now, to tie this into feedback of the accountability code, remember, feedback is the very last step. So sometimes you don't recognize these things until after everything is said and done. And there's no reason to go and beat yourself up about a situation or something that you did or something that happened to you, because this is how we learn and this is how we grow. And you can use it as an opportunity to move forward, or you can be resentful about it and still be pissed. Now, you probably heard in the story that one of the steps of the Boss-Minded framework is to find your edge. And finding your edge is really beautiful balance between I'm choosing to grow and getting outside of my comfort zone, but I'm not going to go and do stuff that sabotages me. I don't want to take too big of a step where I can't even think clearly, or I'm just not ready to implement the things that come with what I'm choosing to do. So I hope that as you think about feedback, go back to some past experiences that maybe are still up in the air as to what you should be doing, and make a choice about how you're going to behave in the future, because your ability to follow through is going to be highly impacted by the things that have already happened to you, because we're human. So I'm going to leave that with you today. I sincerely appreciate you being here. I hope that if that story resonated with you at all, just know there's like 53 more stories just like that where you can learn from. And with every single story, I have included directions on how to take action with that specific thing. So there's chapters on productivity, time management, customer experience, money, finance, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, go get on the wait list, bossminded.com, click on books, and then you'll find the wait list. And I hope that you'll join me next week for another episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants.
Thank you for listening, friends. If you got value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop a review or share this with a friend. Let's be real. Let's spread the word, because we all know someone who could use your loving kick in the pants.